Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Boost Up. Again, John, Dave, and myself. We're going to look back over Leinster's excellent victory last weekend against the Sharks, all the other URC action, and of course, look forward to our Inter-Pro derby down in Galway at the weekend. So, lads, a stonking game, probably one of the best games we've seen in the RDS for quite a time. Fantastic atmosphere, nearly a full house. We scored 8 tries. They got 5. It was a bit sort of Newcastle under Kevin Keegan, but very, very entertaining game to watch.
Brazil with Pele, I think you mean.
Probably.
Yeah, it was a cracking game. As I was saying to you earlier, it was a bit kind of defenses optional a la Super Rugby there for a while, but I think that's partially to do with our defensive system not quite bedded in the head of the man playing 12. So there were a few, well, not his fault, but there were a few lapses in defence for us. And we were able to kick over them and cross kick over them very, very nicely and gather balls on the wing. From multiple players, Robbie Henshaw kicked one himself, Charlie Natai, and Sexton kicked some. It was a great game, and I'd say Jason is absolutely thrilled to see that we're not beating the Dragons by 50 points. That we're having that was a fixture. I know that we won by a fair bit in the end, but it was 1 point in it at halftime. It was a really tough game. It was everything you'd want in a fixture. Well, maybe a bit too many injuries, but outside of the injuries, it was a great game. I loved it.
Yeah, it just continues the quality in the URC this year. It's been a very good year. I mean, there's been some bad games. You're always going to get that, but the majority of games have been really, really good, very competitive. There's been very few wildly one-sided games, and we saw that again on Saturday. I thought Leinster were excellent. I thought Sharks were excellent. I thought Johnny Sexton showed. I mean, I know Hugh Cahill, no relation. Had a few whinges about him, but I thought Johnny Sexton showed beyond any reasonable doubt why he's not only the best fly half in Ireland, why he is the best fly half in the Northern Hemisphere, and probably on form, one of the best in the world. I mean, he was on a different level to every other player on the pitch out there, and he's irreplaceable at the moment. I mean, we saw some of his competitors or his contenders the night before in Galway. They aren't even within cooey of his class, but I mean, it just shows. I mean, one thing about the new URC and the way the tours have gone and the different number of games is you've got more better players playing more earlier games, and that means the competition starts off almost with we can't really afford to lose this one kind of vibe about it. So I mean, the standard so far has been. I mean, okay, the last couple of years have been a bit kind of hit with COVID and stuff, but the standard of the URC this year I think has been higher than the European Cup over the last couple of years.
But Dave, throw in all the lads that were missing for the Sharks.
And the lads that were missing for Leinster.
Of course, yeah, I agree. But do you know what I mean? That, if we play them at the latter stages of the competition, you know what I mean? You're going to throw in 4 or 5 Springboks, you're going to throw in 3 or 4 or 5 possibly Irish internationals going into. Do you know what I mean? That's serious. And even if you look at the two teams, they were pretty stacked. And it was, as John said, it was a very competitive game. It wasn't a lopsided, hockey on by Leinster. It was a match that you'd say, Jesus, this is tight. This is.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about this. This could be a defeat here. It certainly wasn't decided until the latter half of the second half.
You stick some of the guys who Sharks are missing, guys like Luciano Am and Sia Khaleesi and Eben Etzebeth are amongst the best players in their position in the world. In some cases, maybe the best. Certainly on form last year, I thought Luciano Am was the best centre in the world. You add those to the guys who are missing for Leinster, like Tyke Furlong, Gibson Park, the entire Irish back row. Well, most of the Irish back row. Hugo Keenan, James Lowe.
Keenan.
Yeah. You put those two teams fully loaded on a pitch, I'll tell you, that'll be some game. I mean, that's an international standard game. Never mind European. that's an international standard game. So
And
I
in
mean, it just shows you.
Sorry for interrupting you, Dave. In fairness, the Sharks are the third best team in South Africa.
Yeah.
Third best team. You know, the two of the others contested the final, and the Stormers are three from three.
Yeah.
With bonus points all the way, and you know they've still got a game to come against. I think the Sharks, or is it the Bulls? Anyway, it's a derby game they have that they postponed until they're not playing until the Six Nations. So that's like just I think Leo Cullen said it during the week. There's just 18 games. There's just no time to make mistakes, and everybody that's what everybody wants to see. Everybody going fully loaded all the time. The only downside for Leinster is that we can't develop players the way we used to. But outside of that, it's great. It's great for the spectators. Surely, you know.
That's exactly what I was going to say, John. That the one downside to it is, excuse me, the development opportunities. I mean, Rob Russell played really, really well. I thought I was critical of him in the game against Zebre, but I thought he was excellent, really, really good against Sharks.
Yeah.
But we don't have those opportunities anymore. Those kind of easy games that you could during the international window where you could seed a few guys in. And I think it really highlights that the next kind of big thing on the agenda, if you like, for the United Rugby organization, has to be some kind of reserve or A League. How they organize it, what the timings are. I know it's really, really difficult, especially with the Currie Cup kicking off in South Africa in January. But something has to. We have for everyone in the league. Their kind of next level team has to get some game time, because it's going to be harder to find opportunities to give them game time in the URC itself.
Well, I'd suggest
Sorry, John, go on.
All I was going to say is I suggest that the South Africans, it's not feasible for them to send, and they have the Currie Cup anyway, so but it's not feasible for them to send 8 teams all over the shop.
Well, you could pair fixtures if you were able to do it in such a way as when the South African teams were up here, you played both games, if you like. That they played so Sharks would have played Leinster on Saturday, and they would have played Leinster A Saturday morning, kind of thing, if that were possible.
But
now,
you
obviously,
still have to bring twice as many players.
Oh yeah, I mean, you've still got restrictions on numbers and costs and things like that. But it is something. I mean, you could do something localized. So I mean, I've seen suggestions.
I think it's going to go that each country will try and develop, or whatever system's going to suit each individual country. For example, you mentioned the Currie Cup. That's what South Africa is going to use. We're going, there's going to be certainly this year. There's more emphasis on AIL. Like a lot of the guys that would have been on the fringe of the Leinster teams are now going out and been farmed out into the AIL, and that's where they're playing their games. Whereas they're not going to pick up the caps for Leinster, but it's going to mean that they're getting game time. They're not just sitting in a gym hoping that they get a break for Leinster, but they're going to get some game time in an AIL. Maybe, and I think that maybe they should be trying to farm those players out evenly amongst the teams within the AIL, so that you try and build up the standard amongst the top, 8 sides, and whatever number of those players are going to be spread out throughout from the Leinster ones that are from the teams that are in Leinster, so that those guys are playing at a higher level.
We could see some revival of a British and Irish Cup type competition as well between whoever, whether it's the A teams of the Premiership clubs in England, and otherwise we're looking. In fairness, though, the Italians have a league just below their, that's in existence and doing okay. There's a new league in Scotland the last 2 or 3 years, Super 8 or Super 6s or whatever.
Super 6s.
And then there's the Welsh Premiership, which is, some people say it's a higher standard than the AIL, and it's more professional anyway. There are more professional players in it, and the AIL, people say it's a big step up from AIL, and that's the issue, is trying to find something that fits in between the AIL and a fully fledged professional league. An A league is probably a good thing, but I don't see, unless you're doing some kind of a British and Irish.
But if you get more contracted players that are training as professionals, being paid as professionals, playing in that AIL, the standard's going to increase, rather than the fella who's just done an 8-hour day in an office and then gone down and doing a couple of hours in his local club on a Tuesday or Thursday night.
Yeah,
The thing I'd worry about,
circle.
the AIL at the moment, the standard is really, really high, and there are a lot of really good players playing in it. The thing I'd worry about it is if you just started dropping players in and taking them out and dropping them in and taking them out, what that damage that would do to a league that's had struggles establishing itself post the focus shifting almost entirely to provincial rugby. And the other thing is, like you say, Jay, about guys kind of shifting around. Okay, so there's a lot of St. Michael's guys who don't have a past men club, but there are guys like Blackrock guys, Terranure guys who won't want to like. Oh, we need to balance things up at St. Mary's. We'll stick a few Terranure guys in there. No,
you know what I mean? I know, but at the end of the day, they're professional.
Again, omelets and eggs. I agree.
Yeah, and like, you know, you could say the same. We're going to get onto it obviously later on about Leinster are going to play Connacht next weekend. You know, there's a plethora of ex-Leinster guys playing there. They're professional players. In their heart of hearts, I'm sure they'd all love to stay one club men at Leinster. But the reality is, like, they have to move on if they want to progress their career. That happens in every walk of life. And, you know, there's a bunch of lads that left in the summer that are down there and making a good name for themselves now. So fair play to them. And I think that's what you got to do if you're a professional sportsman. You got to adapt into a new environment rather than just being stuck in the mud and saying, oh, well, I went to Terranure, I'm going to play for Terranure College or FC, and that's it, tough luck. Like, it doesn't work like that.
The other option is kind of the Inter-Provincial Championship. And our A teams do play against one another a fair bit. The only thing is those games always seem a bit, you know, mixy-matchy. Sometimes, you know, they'll decide between themselves to play it in 3/3, or James Ryan will play for Munster A to get him back fit again. And it's been messed around with a lot. Now, if you could do it all, if you could get a proper Inter-Provincial Championship and maybe invite the Scots franchises in, and you've 6 strong teams, that might be a way to do it. Because again, you kind of there wouldn't be huge costs associated with that. It might be the way to do it. It's not so much a concern. It's just something that's kind of been the opportunities for younger players to get seeded into teams are restricted because of the quality of the senior competition. So it's a nice complaint to have. It's
true, but whatever. Just moving the discussion back to Leinster a little bit. Whatever about there's less opportunity for younger kids to come through now, as John said, because of the quality of the opposition has increased. The other side of the coin is it is becoming, each season seems to be more attritional. Like last weekend, we saw Larmer going off with an ankle injury, and then you had Luke McGrath, Baird, and Ruddock going off with concussions. You know, so that's 4 lads that are out for varying amounts of time. But if there's 4 lads out, it means there's 4 guys have to come in from somewhere. So, you know, that's the other side of the coin about having big squads. And I think I read, like, and we'll talk about it briefly, with Munster when they played Connacht, I think they've played 45 players this season. So there's still, you know, now obviously, like, their depth wouldn't be as steep as Leinster. And if you take out 10 players or whatever went away to South Africa with emerging Ireland from the Munster team, they've got to go down a little bit further into their depth chart and take fellas out of academy and give new caps to 4 or 5 new, you know, young fellas coming through. So, like, there is opportunities there still for younger players to get an opportunity to start and get their cap for Leinster. But, like, we have seen as well the increasing standard of the league. Like, you know, I was just looking at, like, you got Benetton. Like, when did we see Benetton 4th in the league? And it's not like, you know, and like, they're playing pretty good rugby. Like, I watched their match against Dragons, and I thought, like, are Dragons really that? Dragons were like are doing now what they used to do again when they play Leinster, just send out their thirds and go, well, we've conceded this game. Now they're actually sending out their thirds and conceding the game to Benetton.
Dragons, I mean, they are a bit in flux at the moment with the coach turnover and stuff like that. I mean, they did beat Munster. I mean, I don't know how much of an achievement that is considered at the moment, but they did beat Munster. So, you know, they're not dreadful. It's funny, Benetton have quietly snuck up to, maybe snuck is the wrong word, but they've kind of climbed to fourth without much fanfare. Whereas Zebre, who haven't won a game yet, have been garnering all the plaudits for the rugby they've been playing. But yeah, I mean, it can only be seen as a good thing that they seem to be, the Italian Federation seems to be pouring more money into those two teams to kind of upskill them, or up personnel them. Benetton are playing really good rugby. I saw a couple of the games this season and they've been excellent. I thought Zebre were going to do it again. I thought they were going to pull another comeback out of the bag at the weekend, but they didn't manage it. They lost a kind of a simple enough intercept try, and that kind of broke them. But that was a good game. That Zebre game against the Stormers was a good game.
But like Zebre have played hard opposition. Like they played Leinster, they played the Storm. Like Stormers are third in the league. Leinster first.
They're the champions.
They're kind of getting there. They're trying to get there. They're certainly getting their hard games out of the way first. But like I was just looking, obviously we mainly focus on the top of the league. But conversely, if you look at the bottom 8 teams in the league, like all 4 Welsh are in there. Now we've spoken ad nauseum about that, like the bottoms in Welsh rugby. But there's one Scottish, one Italian. But worryingly, there's actually just 2 Irish in the bottom 8 of the league. And both of those sides played each other last weekend. Both teams have won now one victory out of 4. But like, I don't know. I don't want to spend too much time, because it just seems every podcast I've listened to this week spends most of their time discussing Munster's demise. But like they just looked a very, very poor average side. And when you see their pack when I saw Knox getting his flying wings, like I don't think I very, very rarely can remember ever seeing a Munster pack been decimated like that in the scrum and the prop going up in the air.
I don't know why you're surprised that happened, Jason. I mean, Connacht to Finlay Beelum.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I wouldn't have been his biggest fan. I wouldn't have been his biggest fan, but my God, he's a fella. Like a couple of seasons ago, I thought Josh van der Fleer obviously took a lot of solace in whatever coach he listened to the coaching after the World Cup, and he changed around to become one of the best players in the world. Finlay Beelum obviously has taken on board what somebody has said to him, because he has changed into becoming a very, very competent rugby player now. And I would have been one of his more harsher critics.
I thought he was excellent for Connacht at the weekend. But going back to Kenyon Knox, you don't often see a prop getting his wings at that level. But he is a young player, and there seems to be an element of that the players don't. I'm not sure whether they're not sure or whether they don't believe in the messages they're getting from the coaching staff, and they just haven't assimilated them yet. But they look like a team that didn't really know what it was going to do after maybe 1 or 2 phases. They looked like a very ramshackle team on the pitch. You could see Peter O'Mahony's absolute ire with some of the players around him at the time.
But there was one moment that I was around. I'd say Munster made a break out of their own half into Connacht's running towards the Connacht 10-metre line, and I think it was Coombs made a break, and he passed the ball off to the winger Phillips, and the guy, all he had to do is catch it, and he would have guaranteed 20-metre run up the wing, and he fumbled it into touch. Like this is basic skills that they just seem to be devoid of. The amount of missed tackles we've seen dropped passes, passing the ball into touch. That example that I gave, poor positional play. You saw how very quickly, the fullback, sorry,
Campbell, no,
what's his name? Fitzpatrick, sorry. Got the 50-22 because they were able to quickly and very simply outmaneuver the back 3 from Munster and create that space. Like they just look, I don't know, I can't got my finger on the reason why, but my God, it just looks very, very poor.
The only thing I'd say is if you can take your mind back 12 years to September 2010, when a Leinster side under Joe Schmidt played their first 4 games, and I think won one of them as well. And a person who will remain nameless said that Joe Schmidt had lost the dressing room and that it was all downhill. And, you know, they turned it around. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to compare those two teams in any way, really, other than they've got a new coach and they've won 1 out of 4 games under their new coach.
It's a valid point with one proviso. That Joe Schmidt team went on to win the European Cup.
Absolutely.
I mean, no, I actually agree. I actually think the problems with Munster are not problems with Munster. They're just it. Do you remember Dick Greenwood was misquoted to a certain extent, and he got into a lot of trouble in this country when he said you can't give an entire nation a brain transplant. But he was talking about the way that Brian Ashton wanted to change how Ireland played rugby. And Graham Rowntree, I think, wants to change. And he's brought in guys who will do it, like Prendergast and Leamy. I think he wants to change how Munster are playing rugby. And it's not going to happen overnight because they're a very change-resistant province. Other coaches have found that. McGann found it. Penny found it. Razzie Erasmus, to an extent, found it. Certainly, what's his name, Van Graan found it. That they are quite a traditionalist, quite conservative in terms of what they believe the right way to play rugby is. So if you're going to go in and change it, it's going to take time, and it is taking time. I would say that, and the one proviso I would have, I'd agree with what John says. The one proviso is Joe Schmidt was working with a better bunch of players than Greenwood that Rowntree has at his disposal right now. And I think there's a lot of hope in Munster that when the guys come back from the Emerging Ireland tour, it's going to make a big difference and it's all going to click. The thing is, almost all those guys were on the pitch when Munster were leading against Cardiff.
Yeah.
And we all know what happened there. So, I mean, there is work to be done, and it's going to be work that has to be done by the entire squad, and it won't be easy. There may be even more pain because the Bulls are going there at the weekend, you know? So it's going to be tough.
We saw what a fully stacked Leinster made of the Bulls last May.
Yeah,
was it June? Whichever, you know. So I wouldn't be too confident playing the Bulls at any stage of the season. Even though early doors last year we hockeyed them in Lansdowne Road, but
they were what were they? They were 2 for 2 until they went into the weekend. They lost at the weekend to Glasgow, I think.
Bulls are 3 from 4. Bulls are 3 from 4.
They were 3 for 3 and then lost to Glasgow. Is that right?
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
I mean, they obviously they hit the ground running this time, which they didn't do last year.
None of the South African teams hit the ground running last year. It was just like they were in a whole new competition. They were doing that's not a criticism of them, John. I'm just saying that, and you can tell the difference this year. Stormers are 3 for 3, Sharks are 3 for 4, Bulls are 3 for 4, Lions I think are 2 for 3. Is that right? 3 from 4 as well.
Lions are 3 from 4, Sharks are 2 from 3, Bulls are 3 from 4, and Stormers are 3 from 3. So
they've hit the ground. They're going a lot better than they were this time last year. So it's going to be a tough fixture for Munster on Saturday.
But last year their country was still in a complete lockdown. Like they, you know, like so obviously everything was so much more difficult for them. I'm sure there was a little bit of probably taking it a bit casually, maybe. I don't know. Not expecting it to be as
they got their shit together for the knockouts, though.
they certainly did. Yeah, it will be a very tough game at the weekend for Munster, all right.
But going back to us in the sports ground, I mean, Connacht are one of those teams that kind of annoy you sometimes because you don't know which Connacht is going to come out. They're kind of a mix between, you know, Andy Friend's more pragmatic Connacht and Pat Lamb's jouet Connacht from a few years previously, and sometimes that doesn't work. But when it does, they're bloody hard to play against.
Also, and again, like I'm sure it happens every season, but particularly this season because there was quite a big chunk of talented young Leinster fellas went down there. You know, Josh Murphy, Hawkshaw, Adam Byrne, Peter Dooley, and I'm sure I missed out a couple that moved down. So like obviously, you know, if that's your childhood province, that's the one that you want to play for. And if they're kind of saying, well, there's no room for you here, unfortunately, lads, I'm sure you get a bit pissed off and you want to make a point and prove a point. So, they've also got that little bit of chip on their shoulder to want to put in a big performance against the team that kind of showed them the door,
Mm.
And then, you've also got other guys. You got, like, off the top of my head, Jack Ainger, Tom Daly, Thornbury, all guys that have grown up in Leinster and one, by hook or by crook, ended up in Connacht. So, like everything, you want to put it up to your ex team.
I thought it was, just as you're mentioning that, during the Desperation Derby, you had Thornbury up against Byrne, and those guys played together a lot at Leinster for the academy and A sides or whatever. And Thornbury, I have to say, he made absolute shit of the Munster lineout. He really went.
Thornbury's a huge guy though. He's 6'8".
But lots of huge guys don't do that. He really made crap of it.
But he's very athletic as well. He's easy to throw up, easier to throw up than other lads that are 6'8". Him and Byrne were actually in the same year in the academy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
If not, there were only a year between them. I think Thornbury did an extra year because he had so many injuries, and Byrne, one of them did 4 years anyway, and they were in and around if they weren't in the same year. I think they were both coming to have, when Byrne went to Scarlets, Thornbury likewise didn't get a contract and ended up in Connacht. Did he go somewhere else in between?
Did he go to New Zealand for a while?
I think he did. Yeah, I think he went somewhere. But yeah, two great players, two very athletic guys as well, who are, but Thornbury has that extra few inches height, which is going to stand to him in the line-out, it could be a funny one this week. Both sides are going to be affected by the emerging Ireland squad. Connacht possibly worse than us. I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think they may be even more disturbed by that. But we're also going to come up against a lot of minutes for some of the guys that wouldn't have got those minutes early in the season. A lot of the senior guys. Van der Fleer was rested this week, but there'll be guys who'll need a bit of a break before the autumn internationals. Ireland guys. So are we likely to field Sexton again down there? I'd say we might be holding him for Munster next week, or who knows. You'd have to say Connacht and Galway are a bigger threat than Munster in the Aviva currently, anyway, on current form. But yeah,
we did beat them 45-8 last season.
Yeah,
down there.
Yeah, that's true. But
but they have beaten us. We know that they've beaten us as well in the last 5 years. They've probably
they kept it very tight in the first leg of the Champions Cup playoff, if you remember.
Yeah,
but if you had to pick a game for Leinster to, if you had to put your money on Leinster in playing Munster in Lansdowne Road or Connacht over in the sports ground, which one would you say would be more likely to win? To me, it'd be the home game every time and twice on Sundays.
Yeah, but I know we're probably getting ahead of ourselves, but I was listening to Off the Ball the other night, and Thornley said there was only 28,000 tickets sold for that game, which surprised me. I would have thought there would have been more, particularly that there was such a strong attendance at the game at the weekend in the RDS. But is it time now that the IRFU or Leinster, I don't know who makes the decision, says, why don't Leinster play Ulster instead of Munster in the Aviva? Ulster have been the strongest second province for the last number of seasons. Do you remember they almost beat Leinster in the quarter-final of the European Cup a couple of years ago when Stockdale dropped the ball over the line? They brought down a huge number of supporters for that game. It's maybe there's a bit of fatigue. I've again listening to a few podcasts, and with the Munster Mafia that seems to be continually on them, all kind of saying that there's the Aviva wouldn't be the favourite hunting ground, especially with all the recent defeats that they've suffered there, whether it be against Leinster or Toulouse or
Saracens.
Saracens, and whether or not they'd rather change that fixture up. And maybe I think a bit of might give a new impetus to the league if Leinster said, well, every second year we play Ulster, and
There's a good compromise. Play them every second year, and that stops it getting stale as well.
I think there's a certain amount of actuarial kind of mathematics going into it to work out, who's going to. Didn't Connacht play Ulster in the Aviva, one of the first games back after COVID, and it was an absolute fucking disaster.
Yeah.
Nobody showed up.
But
there was a lot of nervousness after COVID. Yeah. There was an awful lot of nervousness after COVID.
But also, if you live in Belfast, are you going to you know what I mean? It's not a glamour fixture playing against Connacht.
Yeah, true.
I would suggest.
Yeah.
And whereas if you said, well, you're gonna come down to Dublin, you're gonna play Leinster, it's gonna, you can be part of a big occasion with 50,000 people in the stadium with a Gansey load of Ulster fans. I think that's far more attractive than saying, and there's hardly going to be any Connacht at it.
The question is, as I say, I mean, you're looking at, okay, so there's 28,000, so that's 10,000 more than you get in the RDS for the Munster game. So that's one thing. Yeah. So you have to kind of juxtapose how much it costs to rent the Aviva, we'll say.
But it's half empty. It's either, you know what I mean? Is your glass half full or half empty?
Yeah.
But the stadium looks
the question
empty.
is, is your bank account half full or half empty after? Is what I mean. That Leinster and the IRFU will be looking at which is the game that's most likely to generate more profit. I mean, I've no doubt if they thought that the Connacht game would be a bigger game, they'd move that to it. But at the moment, they think the Munster game is the bigger game.
But I would just say that it just gives the impression that it worked in the past, and 15 years ago there was 80,000 people in Croke Park, and sure, it's always going to be that way. We've kind of moved on now. Munster, there was your woman Fiona Hayes was saying that she was thinking strongly about whether she'd go or not because she couldn't.
I agree.
Stomach another defeat. I'm sorry, she lives in Limerick, and this is going to the Bulls game against Munster in Limerick.
Yeah,
she says you go to rugby to enjoy yourself, and I don't really want to see another defeat. Was her attitude. Right, fair enough. Everyone has their own opinion. But are you going to get into a car and drive 100 or 200 kilometers if that's the feeling on the ground?
That's and to feed into what you're saying there, Jay. I mean, the attendance from Munster for those games in the Aviva has generally been predominantly Limerick, Tipperary, Waterford. The ones that it's easy access. I mean, Cork and Kerry, it's a long bloody way from Cork. Even on the motorway, it's a long drive from Cork to Dublin. And it's getting harder to come up to Dublin, especially if the odds are, and you're thinking, and you saw, the one that was a real killer was the game last season in the Aviva at the end of the season when Leinster put out a very young team and still won handily enough. That was. I mean, a lot of Munster guys were really. That was a real low point for them. So you wonder how much stomach there is for it. So I mean, I don't know. We'll find out because I mean, as Tony says, that there might only be 28,000 tickets sold for it. When was that? Monday night. But with the sales that have been inspired by the game against the Sharks, and then we're into pro rugby again. So it's a long time to go yet.
I'm sure it might go. I'm sure it might hit 40, right? Which is great. But all I'm saying is, just to liven the thing up.
Yeah, it might be nice that they said
next season just go Ulster, and following year go back to Munster and rotate them around.
And the other thing is, from a selfish point of view, I'd love to see because we've seen it in knockouts. We don't see it all that often. Munster in the RDS on our own patch.
Yeah,
that'd be kind of.
Yeah, it's a long time since it was going back to the time that we were. It was going back to the time that they were redeveloping the Aviva Stadium.
Yeah,
that was. The last time Munster, remember, was it John Hayes stood on Keane Healy's face?
That's right, yeah.
Was it come back? I mean, that's a long time ago now, right?
There haven't been a lot of games. I mean, we played them in one or two knockout games since. In knockout games.
Oh, Zebo's last game.
Yeah.
Zebo's last game was a semi-final, was it?
Yeah. So it'd be nice to see. It'd be nice. So I have no objection to changing it up. I mean, I'm sure we'll see come Saturday week or whatever it is, Saturday fortnight. what it turns out like. But to get back to the Connacht game again, it's a game against Connacht in Galway is always difficult. It's always difficult, and I'm sure a team as injury prone as Leinster are now aren't looking forward to going down and playing on a plastic pitch. So it'll be
concerning. It's a scrum half is concerning. You've got our two, guys that are probably going to play 90%. First choice, two guys are going to play 90% of your game, and I don't know whether Nick McCarthy was rested last week. I don't know.
I think there's a genuine competition between those two guys.
I think Cormac Foley might be a genuine prospect. I think he might be the best prospect to come out of Leinster in a long time at scrum half. I mean, his injury, his season was it ended early. Well, not early, but it was late in the season when he came in. But it was ended straight away almost last year after being really, really good against Munster. Actually, in that game in the Aviva, he was the dominant halfback on the pitch. And he played really, really well when he came on against Sharks. I loved his delayed pass to bring the Sharks defense out and then just floated it over them for Russell's try. So that was class.
Yeah, beautiful try.
I think he might be the real thing. I think that, been stuck, Maria, with him and Nick McCarthy for the game in Connacht won't be the worst thing in the world. It won't be as damaging as people might have previously thought it was.
Yeah.
Furlong, I think, could be back. Yeah. I saw pictures of him in training, which is good to see. I hope, from memory, I think he only signed a 1-year deal with the IRFU last season, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So I hope they
I think the days of people eagerly scanning the training pictures. I know I used to do it to see who might be training and so who might be fit or not. Did you read Peter O'Reilly's article about how Leinster train 2 weeks ago? I think in the new kind of reduced contact way. Leinster do almost no contact in training now, almost none. So looking at guys who are in training and wondering why they're not playing, I think a lot of guys who are injured can now still train.
But at least you can. But at least you see them tagged out as opposed to getting physio on their torn hamstring or whatever.
Well, that's true. At least they're not off in Magaluf or whatever.
They say that James Lowe and Hugo Keenan they won't be there this week, are not far away, that they might get a game the following week. And even Luke McGrath, I don't think is too bad. I think he's return to play protocols okay, but I don't think he is going to be a long-term absentee.
I think, and I don't know if this is the case, but looking at Leinster over this season, I think Leinster aren't even worried really that much about if a guy passes or fails a HIA. If he has to do one, I think they're keeping him off.
That's fair enough. But,
I'm just saying, I get that sense.
I think rugby's moving that way now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that has to be the way to go.
There was some doctor on, I think it was Off the Ball again recently, some American doctor who was kind of highlighting that the way, rest is basically the thing to do.
Yeah. I think it's the way it's going.
Also, Frawley is not too far away, I believe. I think it's Frawley, Keenan and Lowe, who is believed may play a part against Munster, but won't play this week. Dave Kearney, Jack Conan. People who get injured in these warm-ups, it's a bizarre thing, isn't it?
I think Caelan Doris is back and Josh, as you said.
Yeah. But
it is strange how many fellas, unless they're doing what the Dubs do and just changing the team, but it's the way around it. I don't know. but
I get the feeling that Jack Conan's one was an actual injury because they were talking about him. Leo was talking about him in the.
Yeah, he was actually stripped from what I could see on the film. Like they showed him kind of been treated on the pitch before the match.
But, you know, I don't know what they do. Do they put fellas in who are 50-50 and then make a decision on them in the warm-up? I don't know. There's something funny going on anyway, because we can't be losing a player every single week in a warm-up.
Well, if we are, I think it's time to look at our warm-up.
At the warm-up, exactly. You know, time to
change
how you warm up.
but like we were looking forward to seeing Harry Byrne a couple of seasons ago, and every bloody warm-up he was getting injured, you know.
Playing AHL, I think, at the weekend, wasn't he?
He was supposed to have been.
So,
I don't know.
Yeah. I think he played. Was it Lansdowne he was playing for?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure who he was playing for, but he was given. He was supposed to be. They were supposed to see if he could last 80 minutes. You know, he does seem to be made of chocolate for whatever reason.
I think players go through phases with their bodies. This is based on absolutely zero science whatsoever.
Well, he's quite young.
Please tell us, enlighten us, Alex. Dave.
Well, I was just going to say there's a gap in the science-free health market now, by the looks of things, after Alex Jones and his $100 billion fine. Excuse me. I think players go through phases where they get a lot of injuries for maybe a year and a half, and then they just don't. I mean, you look at Jason Jenkins, for example. He spent a year and a half injured, basically. And now you look at him, he's...
Jinx him, don't jinx him.
Yeah, okay, yeah, touch wood. This table is made of wood. So, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you see players go through that and then they come back. But, I mean, we're in a strong position. I mean, like, we could start... I mean, our locks are good. I'd say Frawley is delighted that he's been moved into the out half slot in the minds of Irish rugby fans, because the centre slot is looking really crowded these days. I mean, whatever the talk about Stuart McCloskey's the player out, I can take or leave. Luke Marshall looked brilliant for Ulster at the weekend. He looked like the player that we saw in the Aviva that time. Yeah. And James Hume still has to come back. Yeah. Then you've got Ringrose and Henshaw. You've got Bundy Aki. You've got Chris Farrell down south.
Jamie Osborne scored a lovely try for Emerging Ireland.
Yeah, so the centre ranks are looking very packed.
I can't believe how well that guy has come on. I mean, he looked so fully formed. I know he's a big guy for his age, but he looked so fully formed last year in terms of his play and his toughness. Like, for a guy, when you look at him, and he's 6'4" or something, you look at him and you go, that guy's not 20. Jesus, how can he be still 20?
But he's a very good footballer as well. He's a really good footballer.
He seems to have it all.
He's got the whole skill set.
People say he doesn't have huge pace, but and I don't know whether that's true or not. I've never timed him over 100 meters or even 20 meters, but he's certainly got everything else in spades.
I'd say maybe he doesn't have great acceleration, but a 6'4" lad who's fit and strong, once they get that leg stride going, they're going to move it quite a lick.
That's true, and they look deceptive as well. The taller you are, the more.
Do you remember the slowest looking player I ever saw in my life was Yannick Jojon? Do you remember him? He used to play for France.
Yeah.
Looked. Well, I suppose he looked like a typical French centre. You know, he spent half his time in the centres smoking a gitan, and the other half scoring worldy tries. But he never looked like he ran fast at all. But I never saw anyone ever catch him.
Yeah, well,
he was the man that the word languid was invented for.
It is deceptive. The taller you are, the slower it looks like you're moving. Lots of things.
Will Greenwood was another one. Will Greenwood never looked particularly pacey.
Another tall guy, another 6'4".
Yeah, another tall guy, and he was quick. He was fast, like.
Who was the guy? He retired and he went on to coach in Ulster, but I think he's gone now. He was a fullback from New Zealand. Jared Payne. I see. He used to glide over the ground.
Yeah, he was a classy looking player, wasn't he?
He had a very bad injury early in his career though that did rob a bit of pace out of him. But he had that funny looking stride that he didn't look like he was traveling, but same thing. He wasn't that tall either.
I'm thinking of a player that he reminded me of, and it was a player during the 90s. You might see if you can guess. He was another fullback.
Christian Cullen?
No. South African fullback,
Go on, David.
Andre Joubert.
All right.
Oh, yes.
You remember him? He was
He's a good
another one
player.
who
I do,
just
yeah.
used to glide. Never looked to. He was like a duck. You know, on top he looked so calm and languid and peaceful, but you never caught him.
Mm.
Yeah, all good players. Actually, just I was listening to Keith Woods there. He was talking
just
about
to point
his
out, we just
best.
compared Jamie Osborne to Jared Payne,
Mhm.
Yannick Jojon,
Mhm.
Will Greenwood, and Andre Joubert. So no pressure there.
Yeah.
Yeah, just what you're mentioning, all those players. Keith Woods was on the radio the other day, and he was talking about the best 15 he ever played against, and like he just basically talking about his kind of era, you know, sort of the 90s, early 90s. It was great just listening to him talking about those fellas, because you nearly forget about them now. There's so much rugby on the TV now. Sometimes you forget about the superstars that were playing 20 or 30 years ago. But anyway, there's boys, like, just it's another sad day for the English Premiership. Looks like Wasps are going to go. Like,
Yeah.
they're
I think they're
pretty
gone.
much going to go into.
Can I just
Have
say
they gone
to
now?
Jason, as a former, I don't know if he's still former or current Wanderers man, as a chap, can I just say congratulations on your successful undercover mission to take down one of the crown jewels of English rugby, Agent Richardson. Well done. Come home.
Yeah, it was. It's kind of sad. It is sad seeing sort of the demise of these. Like, at the end of the day, we need strong leagues all over Europe, you know, and all over the world to grow the sport. And it's terrible seeing these icon. Well, I wouldn't say Worcester was particularly iconic, but it doesn't matter.
Wasps certainly
The
are.
Wasps certainly were, and you know, European Cup champions, and see them gone. Like, that's not good for sport at all.
I mean, even their history is kind of it's part of the warp and weft of rugby lore. I mean, Wasps weren't a founder member of the RFU because the guy they'd sent to the meeting got drunk and went to the wrong pub, and that kind of story makes the game richer, you know. So I mean, that'd be shocking. But at the end of the day, the English system, based as it is on a dreadful amalgam of the free market and central planning, you know, I don't know how they can. I mean, they keep reducing the salary cap, and the reason they're reducing the salary cap isn't to make the game better; it's to make the owners richer, or so they don't lose as much money. You either have to decide. I think that they have to decide to either let the RFU take control, or just get rid of all salary caps and financial fair play, and let the market take control, and the strongest will survive.
Just on the Wasps thing, there's a statement just gone up quite recently. I don't know.
Yeah, they've been suspended.
That they're gone and their matches have been cancelled, and they're looking like they're going to go in through administration over the next couple of days. Maybe even by the time people are listening to this. So yeah, it's not good. So that's an 11-team Premiership now, is it? It was 13 at the start. So
all they need to do is get rid of one more, and they'd be happy because they want a 10-team Premiership. I mean, whatever about Wasps going down. I mean, that whole thing has kind of. It's not just. I mean, I was having a bit of laugh there with Jason about, you know, Agent Richardson and all that, but I mean, that whole Wasps thing is massively influential because it doesn't only affect Wasps. Wasps moving to Coventry affected Wasps. It affected Coventry Rugby, and it affected Coventry City Football Club. And those are three teams now who don't know what the hell is going on next year, or even this year. You know, because obviously the stadium is caught up in the whole thing as well. So this one is going to be messier, a lot messier than the Worcester one.
For sure.
As well as which, Wasps have a lot more voices in the media. You saw Lawrence Delalio last week talking about it. And, you know, obviously he's a proud Wasps man and he's very loyal and he wants anything to be done to save his club. And he was suggesting that the government stepped in, which wasn't really an option. And he got a lot of flack for it. But I mean, who amongst us wouldn't want our club to be saved?
Well, like, put it this way, the government did step in and save our club.
Yeah.
You know, after COVID. And like, obviously they saved a lot, all clubs and all sports by giving grants to the various different bodies. And thank God that sport is important to, well, it's important to everybody, but you know, that the government put a value on it, and we're able to help out our various different bodies.
I'm about to say something you never thought, but in fairness to the UK government, they did the same, and part of WASP's debt is the money they owe under that scheme, under the COVID business continuance scheme. So it's going to be very messy. I think this is going to run for a while yet, and I think some learned friends will do quite well out of it, but nobody else will.
Yeah, as ever. Any viewers' questions, Dave?
No, because I didn't ask for any, because let's face it, they have nothing to add. No, I'm only kidding. We're just as we're feeding our way back into the run of things, I thought we'd do. Just
ease our way in gently.
Yeah, just as I was saying to tell the viewers that I was saying to you guys during the week that we want to start moving back towards doing it live again on Facebook or whatever. So that'll be coming up in the next few weeks. But don't worry, we'll be asking for your questions soon enough.
Very good.
Failing to answer them.
Well, anyway, boys, as ever, thanks very much. Thanks very much for watching. If you are following us, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I presume, Dave, again.
No, absolutely not.
Thanks again for watching. Cheers.
Bye.